It's 5:05 and welcome into a Friday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. There are still many unanswered questions about why North Carolina's Office of Recovery and Resiliency, NCORR, ended up over $300 million in the hole while tasked with building homes for victims from Hurricanes Florence and Matthew in portions of eastern North Carolina. The office was created in 2018 by Democrat Governor Roy Cooper to assist in the rebuilding process following the hurricanes. But its ongoing failures with financial mismanagement have created a backlog of people still waiting to have their homes repaired, rebuilt, or remediated. Nearly a decade later, over 750 homeowners are still awaiting a home to go home to. 4 state government operation hearings over the past few years, with the most recent one being in January, have generated very few answers, often following a cycle of wash, rinse, and repeat, with asking the same questions and getting the same answers from NCORR officials. However, State Auditor Dave Bolick is hoping to change that. A new audit will examine past mistakes and how to avoid them going forward in terms of spending money in response to disasters. In a recent exclusive interview, he told CarolinaJournal.com that the ultimate result shouldn't be pointing fingers and placing blame, but rather examining and giving a full accounting of how the money was being spent. The state auditor told the Carolina Journal, quote, "What kind of return on investment did taxpayers get on that money? How do we operate moving forward so we don't find ourselves back in this situation where a new executive director of a disaster relief agency is sitting in front of a joint oversight committee asking for $300 million to fill a hole that the General Assembly believed was already filled with appropriations? We need to prevent that from happening because it's really hard, I think, for everyday North Carolinians and, quite frankly, hard for me to really wrap my arms around what $300 million really is. It's a tremendous amount of money." To put that number in context, he said that his office's current budget is only $26.5 million for the entire year. He said, quote, "I can't tell you the goal is best practices or how we need to do this moving forward. And if we can't deliver that from the state auditor's office, I don't feel like we're doing our job. We have progress meetings with our NCORR audit team every week and sometimes twice a week. So what are we doing? What are we doing as it relates to data collection? Where are we on crunching the numbers, and where are we in terms of being able to give a full picture of some of these results?" State Auditor Bolick noted it is a step-by-step process, and so far it's been very, very productive. So much so that he says his office will be able to meet the July 1 deadline of when that audit is set to be completed and due. We'll have some additional details on this NCORR audit and some of the comments from State Auditor Dave Bolick coming up here in just a few minutes. It's now 5:08. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour. We have got a brand new poll out this morning over at CarolinaJournal.com. One of the main focuses, the economy. To walk us through some of those details this morning, the editor-in-chief over at Carolina Journal, Donna King, joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Donna, thanks for the time this morning. We have these polls that come out every couple of months in the off-year election cycle. A lot of discussion over the last few months, economy, tariff. What do North Carolina voters currently think about the status of the economy?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a really big, important issue for us to poll right now because, we're more than 100 days into the new administration. And a lot of the reason why people flocked to the voting booths this year to support President Trump was the economy. We talked about prices. We talked about everything in that run up. So right now, what we polled was that on economic issues, more than half of North Carolina voters right now say they feel like the economy is getting worse. Just a third, about 32%, said that the economy is getting a little better. Some of this is it takes time to right the ship over a while, but people really are focused on the price of goods and those things. So The tariffs were a big part of that. Well, one, we found that the lower the income level, the worse people thought the economy was. Not a huge surprise there. But in central areas around Charlotte and Raleigh, they were about 41% of people thought the economy was getting worse. So we're seeing a little bump in some of the urban areas. In the coastal area, about 39% thought the economy was getting worse. The big thing that we took away from this was this talk about tariffs. This is something that has really split the Republicans Party between those who want to give us a chance to let the White House get tariffs sorted out and use it as a bargaining chip, and those who say, look, this is a core fundamental value of conservatives, and free market is a huge part of that. So 3 in 4 voters, about 75%, said that tariffs will increase the cost of products. They say that they know it's built into the formula and tariffs are going to cost us more at the kitchen table. But they also, about 52%, said they think it'll lead to more manufacturing jobs. So that's the big question, is what do they think these tariffs really will do? In general, they don't think it's good, but many of them are willing to give, a few years to let it get sorted out. So we're watching them really closely here at Carolina Journal and what this means, because we have so much manufacturing in North Carolina, and imports and exports are such an important part of our economy, from agriculture to technology.
And we've, of course, been talking about some of those direct market impacts as it relates to specifically the agriculture sector across the state of North Carolina. Don, it's interesting that folks, of course, saying prices are going to rise. That's essentially been the messaging out of the White House. The president and some of his advisors have pretty much said in the short term, yes, there will be some short-term pain for these long-term gains. There was a question about how long do people think some of these things would take to roll out. What did you find as the result of that?
I think most people said they were willing to give it a few years, but there was a significant chunk, more than 40%, who said there's going to be no benefit to the tariffs. And so we're hearing an increasing chorus of that, saying, look, in the end, we can't staff the jobs we have. So bringing manufacturing back isn't going to help because there's widespread labor shortage across the state and across the country. So the majority of folks that we polled did find that they were seeing, or plurality, were seeing labor shortages everywhere they go. Certainly more in the urban areas, and most of them said that that labor shortage would continue even if we did have those manufacturing jobs come in.
Well, and we look at the labor shortage. Donna, North Carolina has really ballooned over the last 10 or 15, 20 years or so. You're looking at a state that has seen such an increase in population, such an increase in business. I suspect, obviously, tariff pressure will have an impact on that, but some of that is probably just a growing pain of a very successful state like North Carolina is.
Absolutely. And, some of that falls to, we need more training programs. And we also saw a lot of early retirements during COVID. So I think you're right. I think we are seeing this transition, this post-COVID era transition in the labor force. But, that does mean that our kids in high school or community college or college thinking about going to work in manufacturing, that's just not happening the way it used to in previous generations.
Yeah, that's obviously something that we'll continue to track. As it relates to tariffs, a lot of the beating of the drum is happening at the national level. President Donald Trump, like it or hate it, ran a vast majority of his campaign on tariffs, claiming multiple times it's one of his favorite words in the dictionary. Donna, we did ask voters, what did they think about the image? What were they currently feeling about President Donald Trump? How did they react to that?
So his numbers came down a little bit than what they were in our last poll. So what we're seeing then is that President Trump, his favorability in North Carolina stands at about 46% favorable, 51% unfavorable. Of course, now that's along party lines. He bumps up much higher with Republicans. He's much lower with Democrats. But that is down. He was just slightly above water there in our last poll. And now just over the last 60 days, he's dropping in North Carolina. I think we can probably attribute some of that tariff turmoil to that drop in polling. But Josh Stein, a little below Roy Cooper and a little below where he was at the beginning of coming into his term as North Carolina's governor. He's now standing about 48% favorable, 24% unfavorable. And he's stronger with women. That's what we're seeing with Governor Stein so far, but he's not quite been challenged the way other governors might have been at this point in their tenure. There's not been a lot of vetoes. They've had Helene to focus on, which has people crossing the aisle to get that support out to Western North Carolina neighbors. So it'll be interesting to see how those numbers stand over time.
We'll look at the favorability of Thom Tillis and more as we continue with details on our May Carolina Journal poll coming up after this. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:15, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. It's time to get a look at the roadways on your Friday morning. A look at the traffic with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. And
It's 521. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Good Friday morning to you. Keeping our eye on this morning on a recent exclusive conversation that CarolinaJournal.com had with State Auditor Dave Bolick ahead of a July the 1st deadline for an audit of the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency. That's NCORE. We've talked a lot about that over the past few months and how they ended up over $300 million in the hole. As we look at some of the details with that, State Auditor Dave Bolick told us, quote, "We are very confident that we will be able to shine a light not only on how the money was spent, but give some direction and some solid common sense procedures and some procedures of how we need to manage these dollars, these large sums of money in the future. Our legislature, for example, worked really hard in creating the rainy day fund, and well, then it rained. So it's now time to use that money, and that's been hard-saved money. Individual taxpayers and citizens as well, you're out here, you're saving money, you put money in the bank, you invest it, and then when you pull that money out of a savings account to spend it on an emergency, you're glad you have it, but you're also cost-conscious of how you're spending it." Bolick said that the same thing needs to be done in terms of how money is spent when it comes to disasters in the state, like asking for quotes or estimates from different providers or companies before, quote, throwing money at the problem. Bolick's office has also been keeping an eye on the Governor's Recovery Office for Western North Carolina. That's GROW-NC, which Democrat Governor Josh Stein created as one of his first executive orders as he came into power here in North Carolina. GROW-NC, of course, was created to help with Hurricane Helene recovery in the western half of the state. There have been mixed results thus far. At a March Government Operations Subcommittee hearing, legislators expressed doubt over leaders' plans to quickly and efficiently aid hurricane victims and urged Stein's officials to clearly communicate that their needs to the General Assembly so that they can leverage their power to aid some of those recovery efforts. A lot of discussion over hurricane relief and recovery, all of this on the heels of potentially some major changes in Washington, D.C., as President Donald Trump has discussed the idea of dissolving a vast majority of FEMA and making the states responsible for some of that hurricane relief and recovery. We'll continue to track those details. Again, this audit is expected to be out around July the 1st. We'll keep an eye and wait for those details right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour and, of course, on our website, CarolinaJournal.com, where it's now 524, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Continuing with details this morning out of our May Carolina Journal poll, the editor-in-chief of CarolinaJournal.com, Donna King, joins us this morning on the News Hour. Turning our attention to one of the major national figures here from North Carolina, that is U.S. Senator Thom Tillis. Donna, he's been in the national news a lot over the last couple of weeks. He has a major election that'll be taking place next year. What are voters' appetites currently on Thom Tillis?
Sure. No, that one is an interesting one. We decided to poll both Thom Tillis and former Governor Roy Cooper because there's been some, rumor, there's been some speculation that former Governor Cooper could be a potential Democratic candidate for that seat. So right now, Thom Tillis has an image at 26% favorable to 46% unfavorable. And that's the thing, right? So he's had a few instances where he, broke with the White House on some key things in the Senate. And those Trump supporters are really holding him accountable for that. And they're really demanding that he step more in line with Trump's policies, Trump's positions on things, and he's getting heat for it. So what we're already seeing is a likely primary challenge from Michelle Morrow, the Republican that lost in the race for North Carolina's head of public schools. And then if you look on the Democrat side, former Governor Roy Cooper has about a 48% favorable, 37% unfavorable, less than I would have thought. He was a relatively popular governor when he was here, but his numbers seem to be dropping as well.
Donna, we are now a year over where sports betting is now legal across the state of North Carolina. It's been hard to get away from some of those advertisements, whether you're on Facebook or watching broadcast television. We did ask voters what they thought about legalized sports betting in the state. What did they have to say?
Sure. Well, first, about 25% of people had no opinion. So I think it is a really, it's really a niche product in North Carolina, generating a lot of tax revenue, but certainly it only had a 29% favorability rating. So not widely popular in North Carolina. Those who are in it are deep in it, but for the most part, only 29% of people liked it. 19% were somewhat, and 40% unfavorable on sports betting, legalized sports betting. So it is interesting to see how perhaps it's not been quite accepted widely yet, but it's still, I think, going to be a niche offering here in North Carolina.
Well, let me ask you a little bit more about that.
Sure.
I mean, is this primarily something that is targeted at younger males, those that are in college, just getting out of college? It seems like that might be the target audience, and that is not necessarily reflected in people that are responding to political surveys, Donna.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that, we're going to see a lot of folks who are, perhaps under 30, probably a little more male. They're not always the ones that pick up the phone or answer the polls. So you got to take that with a grain of salt and for what it's worth. Certainly there are concerns about an increase in debt among young men, and there's an increase in addiction among young men. And so, those things, the organization and the state are really focused on trying to prevent gambling addiction with some of this. Time will tell, certainly, but I think you're right. The people who are really into sports betting are not into polls.
We have a question in our poll about minimum grades. Can you explain or give us what that question was and what voters had to say in response to it?
Absolutely. So one, we've heard stories of, okay, should there be a law or a policy where even if you didn't turn in the paper or take the test or do the homework, you got a 50? Right? So that kids weren't trying to dig themselves out of a bunch of zeros to try and pass a class. This idea of a minimum grade, like everybody gets a 50 and then you work from there, broad disapproval. I mean, we had 71% of people strongly disapproved of the idea of providing or having a policy of minimum grades. 85% just disapproved flat. 71% were strongly disapprove. So I think that was really interesting because there's been talk about, this idea of, just letting kids matriculate through school and they really don't pick up anything along the way. It just becomes this sort of kid factory. And I think that this poll indicates that people are frustrated with the process.
And Donna, maybe you can dive into some details on this as it relates to that number. You have been part of dozens of political polls. When you have 71% of people being either for or against something, that's a relatively rare occurrence, is it not?
It is. It is a pretty rare occurrence. We've had a few things like that over the years. This probably has the highest at 85% disapprove. It's not what I expected, to be honest, because, there's been, I think it's responding to a trend. I really think that what we're seeing is the public is frustrated with public schools. They're frustrated with what feels like entitled students. And this is an indicator that they want to see a change.
One of the big discussions that has been taking place, it started well before President Donald Trump was reelected in November of last year, was this discussion of, Donna, what is a woman? This has been a big debate, whether we're talking about men and women's sports and locker rooms and bathrooms. It's a pretty hot debate across the United States. We asked voters about that as well. What did they have to say?
Absolutely. This was an interesting one, too. We said, would you support a law that defines the term woman as someone who is assigned as female at birth? So 50% of women strongly supported it. And I think that that's an interesting point because we had the option of, support, strongly support, unsure, not support. But we had 50% of women in this poll. And remember, this is Democrats, Republicans, everybody. 50% strongly supported the idea of a law in North Carolina that defines woman as assigned female at birth. I thought that was a really interesting result on this. And it's something that has certainly been an issue that we've talked about a lot over the last few years. Now, about a quarter of people opposed the idea of a law defining this. So you're going to really see that divided along partisan lines. But certainly it's something that other states have done. And, it's something that we may see they are coming out of the General Assembly.
Donna, there's a lot more questions in this polls, crosstabs, various graphics as it relates to our Carolina Journal poll. Where can folks get some additional details and check out some of the images and pictures this morning?
Absolutely. We have all of the numbers and you can dive as deep as you want on these. And there's all the crosstabs right there on carolinajournal.com.
We appreciate the time. Donna King, the editor-in-chief of CarolinaJournal.com, joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:31, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Another look at the roadways this morning with Boomer Von Cannon.
Thank you, Nick Webb.
It's 5:37. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. In a move to enhance healthcare detection services and outcomes, the North Carolina House of Representatives recently passed two health bills with overwhelming bipartisan support to tackle prevention and early detection testing. First is House Bill 297, that is called the Breast Cancer Prevention Imaging Bill, and House Bill 567, that's the Ensure Access to Biomarker Testing Bill. Both passed in votes of 110 to 2. The bills ensure access to biomarker testing and aim to improve early detection and personalized treatment for breast cancer and other serious diseases. The breast cancer prevention bill would require every health insurance plan across the state of North Carolina to cover diagnostics, screenings, and supplemental examinations for breast cancer. Representative Howard Penny, the Republican out of Harnett County, said, quote, "This is probably going to shock you, men. I am a breast cancer survivor. In April of 2021, sitting here on the House floor, I scheduled on a Thursday, went in and had my right breast removed because I was diagnosed with breast cancer. By Monday, I was back here sitting on the House floor." Penny said that twice a year he goes in to get a mammogram, adding that men should also get checked if they have any cause for concern. Just two representatives voted against the bill, including State Representative Sarah Stevens, the Republican out of Surry County, who warned of potential higher health costs that could come with the measure. However, proponents argued that those costs are justified. That included Representative Julia Greenfield out of Mecklenburg County, who said, quote, "This is a preventative measure that is very much needed, and I don't think we should be protecting the insurance companies. Preventative measures decrease healthcare costs." Another representative from Mecklenburg County, Mary Belk, said, quote, "I would say that considering the immense health benefits patients get from knowing that they are cancer-free and that they are treated early enough to save their lives, that is worth this amount of money." House Bill 567 mandates insurance coverage for biomarker testing, which is a precision medical tool critical for diagnosing and treating diseases like cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and others by analyzing disease-specific cellular markers. Biomarker testing enables targeted therapies that improve survivorship, enhance quality of life, and reduce healthcare costs in the long run. Representative Diane Wheatley out of Cumberland County said, quote, "This bill has insurance companies include biomarker testing for their coverage, and I ask for your support for better health outcomes and treatments for all North Carolinians." According to the American Cancer Society's Cancer Action Network, around 21 states have some sort of law in place to provide some of that biomarker testing coverage. If this legislation is to go forward, it passed the House, it is now in the Senate, and if Governor Josh Stein is to sign it, that will make North Carolina put them in the mid-20s with some of these other states, including Georgia, Florida, Pennsylvania, New York, and Tennessee that have some of this coverage already. You can read some additional details on both of these bills by visiting our website this morning, carolinajournal.com, where it's now 541. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Taking a brief detour from politics this morning, a very cool event happening this weekend in North Carolina. To get some details on that, Katie Zender, carolinajournal.com, joins us on the News Hour. Got to be NC, Katie. That's taking place this weekend in Raleigh. What are some of the details on that?
Yeah, hi, good morning, Nick. So Got to be NC is an annual festival that the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services has been putting on for a while now. And basically, it's just a little, kind of a small scaled down version of the state fair, kind of a weekend festival that really showcases North Carolina agriculture and specifically, vendors that are specific and exclusive to North Carolina. And it's just kind of like a fun family event that people can go to. They can bring their kids. It's pretty much completely free or almost free, except for, any food that you might purchase or anything like that. But it really showcases agriculture here in North Carolina, and being the biggest industry in the state here, that's really important to the culture here.
Now, you mentioned similar kind of a scaled down version of the state fair. Is this happening up in Raleigh, close to the state fairgrounds?
Yeah, so it's going to be taking place in Raleigh at the NC State Fairgrounds. Agriculture Commissioner Steve Troxler said many people like to call the Got to Be NC Festival a mini fair, and it does share many similarities when it comes to agriculture. Festival goers will find plenty of North Carolina agriculture on display, from animal exhibits, tractors, herding dogs, forestry displays, and all the delicious foods and beverages in the Got to Be NC Pavilion. Plus the free entertainment, music, activities for the kids, those kinds of things. So that is what the commissioner had to say about the event this weekend.
It's going to be hot. However, the weather is supposed to be incredibly nice up in Raleigh this weekend for this event. Now, you mentioned agriculture. That is a huge industry. We've chatted probably at this point, Katie, a dozen, if not more times about some of the various agriculture industries. What are some of the more specifics that people can look forward to if they head up to the state fairgrounds this weekend?
Right. So one of the main attractions of the event is the Got to Be NC Pavilion, which features more than 100 local food and beverage vendors, specifically and exclusively from North Carolina. And so, guests can just kind of go in, wander around, sample some of the vendors' products. There is a small charge for pavilion admission. It's just $3. But yeah, it's going to be featuring a lot of NC vendors specific and exclusive to NC. A couple of notable ones are Kindled Provisions, which started out in 2016 as East Coast Firewood, but they've recently rebranded. And so the company is going to be there this year. This will be the first time that they'll be at the festival as Kindled Provisions. And so Jason Heil, who's the VP of Kindled Provisions, said, "Our whole vision is the fireside provision. So we hope to make the fireside experience more enjoyable, and we're excited to be at Got to Be NC Festival to introduce folks to our products and hope they have a use for our products." Another vendor that's going to be there is called Old Rudera Farm. Now, what they specialize in is a small-scale operation of Piedmontese cattle. This is a rare Italian breed known for their tender, lean, and purportedly healthier beef. So she's going to have a small freezer there and a small setup. They are from Nash County, Larry and Marina Strickland, and they also have setups at the Nash County Farmers Market, which is in Rocky Mount every Saturday, except obviously they won't be there this Saturday. And then Marina has also recently started attending the Nightdale Farmers Market, which is open one Sunday a month, and she made her debut there on Mother's Day.
Yeah, Katie, as we look at this, there's obviously some charity involved in this as well. It looks like some of the Masonic lodges across the state of North Carolina are hosting an event helping raise some money for some children's hospitals as well.
Right. So there's going to be some live entertainment and music and those kinds of things every day. On Saturday, the festival is hosting the Carolina Pig Jig, which features more than 20 Masonic chapters competing in a barbecue showdown, which will support the Masonic Homes for Children at Oxford and the Central Children's Home. Ticket prices are $20 for adults, ages 11 and up, $10 for children, and free for kids 5 and under. And I believe those are the prices for the that specific event at the festival, not the festival itself, because the festival itself is free except for a few things here and there like the pavilion.
Katie, we've got some additional details, some additional quotes from some of the vendors that will be there. For folks that want to get more details on how they can attend this, hours in operation and everything like that, where can they go this morning?
Right, they can read the full article with all the details and events and activities and hours and ticket prices at carolinajournal.com.
Katie Zender joins us this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:46, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Another look at traffic this morning on a Friday with Boomer Von Cannon.
You got it, Dick. Friday. And you're hot.
It's 5:53. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good Friday morning to you. A life-saving moment came full circle last week as State Representative Dean Arp, the Republican out of Union County, presented a brand new home to a woman that he helped save from a fire earlier this year. That home, made possible by the North Carolina Manufactured and Modular Home Builders Association, was unveiled last Friday morning in Hoffman, North Carolina, which is a rural town just about an hour west of Fayetteville. Arp made the historic rescue in February when he and his wife were traveling through Richmond County and noticed smoke coming from a home. Representative Arp quickly turned the vehicle around and rushed inside to find 77-year-old Esther Jones in her wheelchair. He brought her to safety just moments before the fire engulfed the home. In the aftermath, Jones, who is a cancer patient, was faced with the loss of her home and her life as she knew it. Members of the Modular Home Builders Association, moved by Jones's story, quickly mobilized to build her a brand new, fully equipped home. According to Billy Owens, the president of the NCMHA, he said, quote, "When we heard about what Miss Jones had been through, we knew we had to help. Our members are in the business of building homes, but more importantly, we're in the business of building communities. We are honored to stand with Representative Arp and help give Miss Jones the safe, comfortable home that she deserves." The community gathered to watch Jones and Arp cut the ceremonial ribbon and celebrate the remarkable story behind this new home. During the unveiling, Jones expressed her gratitude and described the home as beautiful. Representative Arp emphasized the significance of community and faith during times of tragedy. He said in a press release, quote, "This isn't just a house, it is a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of community. I am so grateful to the North Carolina Manufactured and Modular Home Builders Association for making this possible and proud to help welcome Esther home." A nice story this morning as it relates to that, a wild situation unfolding earlier this year. Now the 77-year-old in Esther Jones has a brand new home just about an hour or so west of Fayetteville. As we have been talking about this morning, our brand new Carolina Journal poll is up and available for your viewing and reading pleasure this morning as we looked at some of the details as it related to the economy, tariffs, favorability of individuals, including Governor Josh Stein, Donald Trump, Thom Tillis, former Governor Roy Cooper, and more. We did look at a couple of other issues as well, one of those being housing policies. This continues to be a big debate, especially in more urban areas across North Carolina. 37% of voters favored increased funding for affordable housing programs as the best way to address some of those shortages that exist, with 23% supporting tax incentives for developers and smaller percentages favoring less interventionist approaches like easing zoning restrictions. 8% of voters supported that, or leaving policies to local governments wholly and allowing local regulators and local boards and commissions to decide those at 21%. We also asked voters about flags. 63% of respondents supported a law restricting state buildings from displaying any flags other than official governmental ones to ensure ideological neutrality, while 26% opposed this approach. Many more questions in the poll this morning. We've got the full details over on our website, carolinajournal.com. Just click on the poll tab right there on the homepage. Well, that's going to do it for a Friday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We're back with you early Monday morning, 5 to 6, right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.